Hello, and now we're ready to start with iteration number 4. And the main focus of this iteration is to display a single quote from a list. This is very similar to iteration 3 where we displayed a single quote. The main difference is the addition of this list. In iteration 3 we had just a single quote, so we were able to use the text property from the storyboard and make that enter the text there. When there is a list, the storyboard attributes will not gonna be enough, and we have to go to the controller in order to maintain the list and select an item from that list at the time the app opens. So this iteration will introduce us to the controller. Now hopefully you became a little bit more comfortable with the view, and let's work a little bit with the controller. So again, with all the other iterations, there are 4 steps. Step number 1 is problem formulation. Step number 2 is solution formulation, and step number 3 is solution implementation. So in the problem formulation, we discussed the scope. So the scope of this app is to display a single quote from a list of quotes of your choice. So sometimes in the problem formulation, the list of quotes will be given to you. Depending on the app you're developing, sometimes the client will have the data and they will give you the data, so you don't really have a choice there. In this particular one, I'm saying you choose the quotes, download them, you collect them, assemble them the way you want. How are we going to test this? Now know that in the app that we developed in iteration 3, we had the begin with the end in mind, which is set up at the storyboard level. So the testing scenario here is to open the app and observe a quote from the list. To make it clear, we're going to try to make sure we do not include begin with the end in mind in that list, so that we can see that the controller took over from the storyboard and replaced the text in the label with a different quote. Solution formulation, there are 3 steps following the design pattern model view controller. The model is connected with the data. There are 2 types of data: single quote and the list of quotes. So for the model, we need to define those list of quotes. And I took some time and prepared a list of quotes that I found. So here they are. And I'm just going to include those as the list I'm going to be working with. At this time, you do your research and everything and include the list in your research at this time. So when we go to development, we know what are the quotes that we're going to use. So this is the data. A single quote will come from any one of those. Now, how do we represent this data in the app environment? So we talked about the model being the actual data I want to use, as well as how it is represented. So there are we introduce the concept of data type, which is the storage the type of storage that you need the operating system to allocate for your data. And the iOS platform provides us with predefined data types that you can use, and the operating system knows exactly what to do once you tell them about those data types. So we're going to use 2 data types. One is called the string, which is data type that represents a single quote. Actually, it represents any set of characters. In this problem, the set of characters are a single quote. The second data type is called NS array, which is a data type that represents a collection of items of the same type. Each item is of the same type. This is like a column in a spreadsheet or in a table. That's what that the array is an indexed column, and indexed column in a spreadsheet or a table with an index starting from 0. Meaning that if you take these quotes and try to put them in an array, you will say that the first item is at location 0, so item 0, which is the item at index 0 in the collection, and then you can say this will be my first quote. So that's the text that I'm going to put in that first item. Then you have item 1, which is item at index 1 in the collection, and you can say I'm going to put this text in that item, and so on and so forth. You can continue to the end and you see how it works. So this is the data type. Now that I know the data type for a single quote, which is a string data type, and the data type for a collection is the array, I need to think about how the app will know about these 6 different quotes. So we will use a file to put the quotes inside the file. If you recall, with the splash screen, we wanted to display an image, so we had to add to our project a file that contains the image I wanted to display. Similarly, although image is different than text, in order for the app to know about these 6 quotes, or if you add more or less, we need to add a file in our project that contains those quotes, and then our app, the controller in our app, will need to open those. So the quotes will be included in a file, and we're gonna call that property list file. Is a file that is a special file that Xcode provides to help you maintain a list or add information that can be used in a list. So that's our model. With respect to the view doesn't change really. No changes in the view, because the view has a label and the label is already there. What's really going to change is the data that goes inside that label. So that is now moves us to the controller, because that's where the logic or the intelligence or the brain that will tell the app what to do. To tell the app what to do, you need to have 2 pieces of information. When or what event will trigger the app to function, and then what functions the app will do. So the event that will trigger the app to function is when the app loads. The storyboard picks up immediately when the app loads, because the storyboard displays that screen. Once the screen is displayed, the controller of the screen takes control. So we're going to need to find a way for the controller to know that the app has already loaded. And iOS environment provides us with a function. So a function is a software module that contains instructions. So there is a function, a built-in function called the view did load, and you will see that function, and this function is automatically notified when the app loads. So what is the function will do, or what instructions do we need to use? We will need to open the quotes file and load the quotes into the NS array object, and I'm going to use an object here to represent an instance of the data type or special allocation of a storage for this particular data type, for this particular instance of the data type. So that's what the word object is. So we'll open this and loads the code in the array, and then select an item from the array, like any item you want. Like I have items at index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll say that we'll just select an item maybe at index 1 or 2. You can play with that. So in the solution implementation, and I no longer need that stuff, so I can take it out. In the solution implementation, we'll write the steps. So I'll say step number 1, we will need to add a property list file and populate it with the quotes. Then step number 2, we will need to add instructions in the viewDidLoad function to load the content, to load the quotes into an NS array object. And then step number 3, I'll need to connect the label on the view to the controller in order for the controller to change its data. And then step number 4 is to assign the text property of the label to a different text from the NS array object. Now this can seem to you, this now will be overwhelming and shocking because almost everything I said so far is new to you. We have moved and represent knowledge that you don't have experience with, because the previous iterations I was dealing only with the display of the app, and you have experience with that as a user. You haven't developed, but you have a user experience, so you've seen an app, you've seen text on an app, you've seen colors on the app, and so on. You understand that. But now I'm taking you behind the scene in something you don't have experience with. So I understand this will be overwhelming, and that's why I'm taking you to a tutorial style so that you can learn by getting your hands wet. So you will be a follower to me until you gain enough confidence and knowledge to be on your own. So don't worry about the fact that you are following. If you want to learn more, I encourage you, and I have that encouragement all the time. Anytime I introduce you to a data type, to a function, and or to a feature, I encourage you to look up that data type or features and learn more about it in the documentation. This video has gone too long now, so I'm going to stop here and go implement this iteration in another video.